0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Phixated podcast. I am your host, Mike Azalina, and I'm joined tonight by a guy who is, alongside of me, living on a prayer this weekend, one we didn't think we'd have to be living on, but Regsy Boo, here we are.
Here we are, buddy. Man, can you just picture all of us raising our hands to that song and like in a crowded dorm room just going, Can you just see it in your, can you just close your eyes and see it in your mind?
Yeah, I'm probably yelling at Stein for something. Regs is referring to our college years, our power hours. They were,
which eventually turned into power centuries.
For you?
No, not just me.
Did I do them?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. You might have done every other.
After 60?
Yeah. Or even during, if you knew we were going 100, you might have.
That's fair. I probably did. I mean, I like soaking wet 160 pounds.
Yeah, right.
So, those were legendary, though. We used to have, when you say packed dorm room, like imagine your typical dorm room, right? And
two desks, bunk
beds in some cases. In other cases, people had them down.
Our particular had a bunk bed for space reasons.
You did. And then because you had the couch.
That's right. The futon.
That I slept on a lot.
That's right.
But we'd have upwards of like 25 people.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Sometimes
it would be close to 25 people. Mm-hmm. It got a little excessive.
Oh my God.
But all for the power hour.
It became, like you said, legendary.
I mean, I feel like hold on. Matt Stein.
Yeah. Matt Stein. Cheers to you, friend.
I mean,
Steiny Boo.
Did you have a specific song that was meant for you on there? Because I did.
Oh, man.
I feel like for a while yours was Chain Hang Low.
Yeah, it was. It changed. It just, whatever I drunkenly got really into for that month, like that's what it changed constantly because I would be stuck on one thing. I would inevitably drunkenly come up with some sort of dance to it. And then like the next month it would move on to something different. Yeah,
I feel like mine was Brad Paisley Alcohol. I feel like that was the one that he kept doing for me.
Yep.
Yeah, that one and Usher,
Yeah.
Because I used to do the hitch dance.
Yeah, Banks was the remix, R. Kelly.
Oh, the R. Kelly Ignition remix, yeah.
That was for Banks, yeah. Mine definitely changed a lot.
And then we all had
Sweet Caroline.
Sweet Caroline, Steinhead, West Virginia for Take Me the Country Roads for himself.
Yep.
And then we all had Jerry Maguire.
That's right, to finish it out. Yep.
To finish it out. Whether it was, you complete me. How about that?
That DVD still exists, people. So
the DVD is classic.
Matt Stein didn't put his mind to a lot of things.
Yeah.
But
a video power hour he did.
It was right. If you could throw a middle fastball to Matt Stein, it was a video power hour that he would have to put together. The man couldn't tell you what 5 + 5 was on some days, but if you told him to go put together a video power hour with all the montages of all these songs and pictures of everyone, he had it done in like half a day, perfectly synced up to the music and like executed to perfection.
You give him a MacBook Pro and let him go up to his room and sit there for hours and maybe come down for a glass of water once in a while to stay hydrated. And he came down with one of the most classic 60-minute.
Again, in like half a day, he had it ready.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
If you found the right task for our Steiny Boo, then he was getting it done.
That was the one. And they were always very hideous and embarrassing pictures of all of us.
Oh, they were terrible.
Yeah. And brutal.
Yeah, and then he would I'm sure he went back and I don't know what they all must have been from freshman year though, right? Because he made it sophomore year.
Yes.
Did he go back and update it? I don't even remember.
He did it. He made it sophomore year, and then he went back and updated it to.
That's right.
For senior year, right before graduation.
Yeah. Yep, that's right.
He made one right before graduation for all of us.
That's right.
Which was like a tearjerker. The end was a tearjerker. unbelievable stuff from him. I don't have mine, so maybe Regs, the next time we get together, you got to bring yours.
Yeah, I'm sure it's somewhere. But we could call Stein. He can make us some copies.
He probably has it saved on his computer.
It's probably sitting on his desk, right? It's in his DVD case. Like, I'm sure he can pull it up in 5 seconds.
Box of tissue sitting in front of him. Oh man, well, hey, we got a pretty packed show, most of it being Eagles tonight, but a couple of things we wanted to touch on right off the top. Thanks for letting us reminisce there. You guys don't know how much that means to Regs and I when you give us like the first 7 minutes to indulge ourselves in what was our college our college lives.
So I have a funny story about that. My mother-in-law just recently started listening to the podcast.
Okay.
And she's been going back and just listening to every episode. She's been downloading them and going back and listening. And the thing she said is, she's like, it's so funny that they spend the first 10 minutes just talking about anything. I was like, that's been the shtick since day one.
Yeah.
I was like, Azzy got nervous at one point that we were spending too much time on it. And I was like, I think I convinced you with no evidence. I was just like, that's the best part. I was like, that's the best part. We just get to, talk about anything for 5-10 minutes. And then I think you got some feedback maybe the next week or the week after.
People
that
love
was
it, dude.
That was like, dude, don't stop doing that. It's great.
Yeah. People absolutely love that we spend time doing that. I think I was actually just literally texting somebody about this as I sat down with you tonight, which is she told me that I'm a great storyteller, and I appreciate that. That's an ultimate compliment because I love stories. I feel like Regs, stories are what get your point home, right? You could sit in front of me with piles of data and slides after slides of data to prove stuff, but if you tell me you're going to show me a slide of data, I'm out. But if you're standing in front of me as a speaker and you're like, oh, I'm going to tell you this story, I'm sitting forward, my hat's backward, my ears are, I'm so much more, I'm locked into a story.
Yeah.
And I feel when I listen to podcasts, and even when I listen to ours, and I told you this, and I'll say this out loud to everybody, I don't always listen all the way through ours because I hate my voice, but I will always listen to at least the first 10 minutes when we do this, because I feel like it is so fun to listen back to and just laugh at the shenanigans that we pulled, because I feel like I don't always hone in on the conversation now. I'm just responding to what you're saying.
Yeah.
But then when I can really listen to it later, I love that. What's your mother-in-law's name, by the way?
Anne.
Shout out, Anne. Love that. Anne, we love you.
I mean, again, I've known her since I was a sophomore in high school, so.
I know. Thanks for listening, Ann. We really appreciate that hometown love. That's awesome. Shout out to Ann. So again, I thank you so much for letting us indulge in that. But we're going to jump into the show here. A couple of things we wanted to talk about right off the bat. And the first thing being one of the scariest things I've ever seen in any sporting event. Certainly not specific to Philadelphia at all, but I think specific to humanity at this point. And that's the Damar Hamlin injury. Or I shouldn't even call it an injury, really, a situation on Monday night in Cincinnati. And Regs, I texted you dude, are you watching this? This is insane. And I don't know that you were at that point. Were you watching at that point?
No, I was at my computer. I was doing some other stuff.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not throwing on Monday Night Football a ton unless I really care about it. It's just I'd rather be sitting at my computer doing other things. But sure, of course, I have Twitter up, so I'm scrolling Twitter, and the tweets are going crazy. So then, of course, I just Google what's going on, inevitably find the clip of everything that's happening, and then I pull up ESPN on the computer and have it on one of the screens just to see what's happening and see what they're saying. But yeah, so I didn't see it live, but I caught all the replays and then was watching the feed afterwards.
So it's interesting that you say that, because I also don't watch Monday Night Football. We had a weird night on Monday. We'll get into that in a little bit. But after our whole situation, we were watching Penn State. Andrew's a Penn State fan, and so we were watching the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And after the game was over, they said that they were going to go to Monday Night Football. And I'll be honest with you, I totally forgot what the matchup was. But then I realized the fantasy implications that it had for me in my championship.
Yeah.
And it's also just a really good game. Like anytime you can watch Joe Burrow and
Mhm.
Josh Allen go head to head, like you're gonna sit and watch at least some of it.
Yeah.
So I said to Andrea, like I'm gonna watch like maybe the first half and then I'm gonna go up to bed. And I did. I was set on doing that. And for some reason, like I stayed really locked into it. Like I wasn't distracted by reading a book. I wasn't distracted by like doing a word search or scrolling through Twitter. I was just locked in. And then what looked like a really relatively normal everyday football hit turned into one of the scariest things I've ever watched live on television or at any sporting event that I've ever seen before. And I think at this point, everybody listening already knows what happened. So like, I just reacted. I was texting like people. I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, I thought maybe he broke a rib. Like,
Yeah,
you know what I
right.
mean? When they went off the air, like I just thought maybe he broke a rib because I'm watching him. Like, he didn't hit his head.
Yeah, right.
Like he just fell down. It almost reminded me a little bit, Rags, of CJG's injury
Yeah,
where
yeah,
he
yeah, it was
popped
kind
up
of-
and
yeah.
went back down.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I wonder if he lacerated it. Like, you know what I mean? Like if that's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
But when Joe Buck came back after like their second or third return and said that he was receiving CPR, like I just froze.
Yeah.
And I just thought, how are these people making it through this? Like, how are these players standing there and making it through this? I don't know, man. Like, we've both been athletes. I don't know how I would do that.
I'm not sure either. I think it was very interesting to me the similarities that his teammates did between that soccer player who also had a cardiac arrest on the field.
Yeah.
In that same instance, obviously there's not as many soccer players as football players on a team, but in that same instance, as soon as the paramedics or athletic staff like got out there and started doing the CPR, they all sort of huddled around it and faced the other direction to not only try and shield everyone watching from having to see that, because chest compressions are not like a fun thing to watch.
Yeah,
Like
you're breaking someone's ribs.
Yeah, you're not doing it gentle, and you're not supposed to. Like that's not the point of this thing. The point is that like, okay, his ribs can heal, right? You need to get the heart started, and that requires force, and it's not fun to like watch a body do that. So it was striking to me how similar his teammates reacted to that same situation from that soccer player as they huddled around and sort of had to turn the other way because of course you don't want to watch that happen to your teammate. It was a difficult situation. I mean, again, I didn't see it live, so I just caught like when they were sort of getting him out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But we've kind of seen today the praise that is finally, and again, not that there hasn't been, but sort of the praise that's come out for the Bulls athletic training staff.
It's so funny that you're saying that because I'm pulling up the names right now.
Who resuscitated him twice. Like he got resuscitated once on the field and then I think once again in the ambulance. So of course that would be the paramedics and EMTs in the ambulance. But it's almost essentially what they're talking about. It saved his life.
Yes.
Like how quickly they reacted. And in that kind of a situation, time is everything. Because the more time that your brain doesn't have oxygen, right, the worse it is.
Right.
So, and rightly so, these people are being praised up and down, which they should be. I mean, you can't just kind of say it's your job. This is something that I can't remember ever happening. I know it's happened before in sports, but for me personally, besides the soccer player, it hasn't really happened in a sport that I've watched closely. So it was just like, you know, and then the timing of it and the stuff happening like just made me think to things in my own life that we don't have to get into because we're not trying to depress our whole audience as we talk about this. But it was just, again, you never expect to watch something like that. Like we've seen compound fractures, like we've seen really bad injuries, right? Guys getting knocked out cold and having their arms up like this, you know, as they try and wake themselves back up. But like you said, when I saw the initial play, I was sitting here with Angela and I was like, he got hit in the chest. Like, I bet his heart gave out. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. Because like you said, he didn't hit his head. And that's the kind of thing you see when someone hits their head and they try to get up and they just kind of go down, like out. It was just, just a scary situation. So it's really great that he seems to be, his eyes are open now. He seems to be responding like cognitively to the people around him, which is a huge deal.
Yep.
He obviously is not out of the woods yet by any means, but the fact that he's semi-conscious and can respond coherently to the people around him is like just crazy good news. And I hope that continues.
Yeah, and I think a couple of guys deserve a hat. And I shouldn't say guys, but about you've already mentioned the training staff as a whole. But I do want to give a nod to a name that was floating around Twitter today as the one who did perform the compressions on him, which is Denny Kellington.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's a name that needs to be said out a million times over.
Yeah.
Denny, congratulations on being a real life hero. Like that's a real life hero right there, man. Like jumping into action, saving the dude's life.
Yeah.
The other two that I want to tip my cap to that I feel like they've gotten credit, but I feel like there's probably more to go around are Sean McDermott and Zach Taylor, the two head coaches in this situation. Like especially Zach Taylor, right? Like this is a guy who has no tie other than, the tape, right?
Yeah.
And I thought he handled it with such class from the opposing perspective, and was kind of there with Sean McDermott every step of the way. Sean McDermott going to Zach Taylor and saying straight up, like, I need to go to the hospital. I cannot coach this game.
Yeah.
And Zach Taylor being like, yeah, dude, I get it. Like, we're not going to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't want to just make assumptions based off of that 5-minute situation that the NFL is putting out. That's not what this conversation's about. There's probably a lot of variables that we're not even aware of in that situation.
Yeah.
And that maybe the NFL wasn't necessarily aware of.
I'm sure they weren't.
Either.
I'm sure they weren't.
Yeah. So I think, the way that those two handled it and basically said, like, no matter what, we're not doing this, and we stand firm in that.
Yeah.
And Zach Taylor's guys going over to the Bills locker room and being a support system, and Joe Burrow standing right next to Josh Allen. Like there is that brotherhood and that camaraderie that was there. So hat tip to them. And then one more hat tip that I want to give before we finish our well wishes to Damar Hamlin, and certainly want to wish him the best, is Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, Susie Cover, Booger McFarland, Adam Schefter, Scott Van Pelt, and Ryan Clark. And really those first 6 to start with, they were placed in the most impossible of situations on Monday night. Like having to fill that time and try and figure out what to say to America after they just watch something that probably struck a chord or a nerve or some sort of trauma in everybody that was watching. I feel like they did such a tremendous job of holding a professionalism and finding that line and that balance, and really just talking about what mattered and not talking about, oh, what are they going to do about this game, but really talking about like how this impacts the players and Damar Hamlin and his family. And what we were all wondering at that point is what they talked about, and they did it with such grace. And I feel like they deserve that credit. And then Scott Van Pelt came on and continued that. And I thought Ryan Clark did a tremendous job of continuing what Booger McFarland did from the player perspective, and communicating to fans who were just watching it what that feels like from a player perspective. So certainly a hat tip to all of them.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's an impossible situation. Like, there's no two ways about it. We saw a person die. Like, he was gone. Like, he had, like, literally, like, that's what we're talking about. And I'm not trying to be so morbid about it, but you can't sort of sugarcoat the situation. It's like, it's literally what happened on live television. And it's just an impossible situation to be in. And to, listen, announcers don't always handle that well.
Yeah.
I honestly think there probably aren't too many outside of Joe Buck that have the sort of experience and wherewithal to handle something like that. Like, quite honestly, he might have been one of the few sports announcers you would want in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And I think the same for SVP. Like that guy, like I love that guy. And he always has such a great perspective on everything and always knows the right people to talk to to get like the real information, not just a reaction. He doesn't look for a reaction. He wants like to really try and understand and have some real empathy for what's going on. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
but I mean, like you
Absolutely.
said, we hope he continues to do well. Luckily, all reports each day are coming back that he's just a little bit more in the right direction. Again, with things like this, things can change almost every second.
Yeah.
So just the fact that he's continuing to do well is great. The fact that his toy drive has now had gotten
unbelievable.
almost like $7.5 million
Mhm.
worth of donations.
Yeah.
Again, I know this like era of humanity kind of sucks most of the time, but every once in a while we get to maybe show that, you know, there are still people out there who have some compassion and empathy and generosity.
And I do love, like, there's been like these little variances of like people adding a 3 into what they donate.
Yeah.
Like it's been pretty cool.
And all the NFL teams changing their like Twitter avatars to, you know,
Yeah,
Hamlin 3 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously,
yeah.
it's very simple stuff. But
everything that can show the united front that
right.
this kid obviously deserves. I mean, everything you see about him has been super
Oh
positive.
yeah.
You know, he's a hardworking kid, grew up in a terrible area in Pittsburgh. You know, had multiple sports hernia surgeries when he was in college, was a 6th round draft pick, worked his tail off, became a starter for the Buffalo Bills, arguably the best team in the NFL. And
yeah, chose to go to Pittsburgh over a bunch of other more highly touted schools.
Yep. So good for him. And here's the hope. And, you know, Damar, obviously you'll probably never hear this, but know that we stand with you, our fan base, everybody all across the world. Like, I love what the doctor said to him today when he wrote down who won the game, and they were like, "You won! Like, you won the game of life, man!"
Right.
Like, so
Listen,
you did, dude. You did.
Positive juju is a real thing. So the more that we can put out into the world, I'm a firm believer of when you put positive things in the air, it makes good things happen.
It's going to happen.
Yep.
Yep. Hey, another kind of sad. I feel like this is not like the happiest of shows. For Philly sports fans, man, this is a hard one. Jim Salisbury no longer associated with NBC Sports Philadelphia.
Yeah, and sort of off the beat of the Phillies.
At least for now. I don't know. Maybe he's going to work. Maybe there's something there. Like, I don't know, dude. It's just very weird. It just kind of came out today that he's no longer. He thanked Philly fans. So I guess this is it.
That's what I mean. And everyone's sort of been responding to him like they're not going to see him anymore.
Yeah.
Which again, he didn't mention specifically any health problems or that he was retiring. It was just that it was his decision that he's be leaving NBC Sports Philadelphia. Again, just a guy who has been a staple of the Phillies media for since the 80s, the 90s.
It has been a long time.
It's been a long time.
I'm going to look back and see when he started with the Phillies.
Yeah, again, it's been a long time. Everyone, like to a man or woman in that press box, respects the hell out of him. By all accounts, he's a really nice guy, but he wasn't sort of scared to ask questions to players while still maintaining a good relationship. Listen, I admittedly, like, I wasn't a kid who read the sports section, but as I've gotten older and older, I do tend to read a lot of articles. I do tend to read a lot more things. And every time Salisbury would put something out there, I read it. And it's like that for several of the Phillies people, but he's been one of those guys for a long time. And yeah, it stinks that he's not going to be reporting on the Phillies anymore after such a long relationship. Again, we just hope that everything's all right and that he'll find something that he wants to do moving forward. But yeah, stinks that we won't see him around.
We did talk before the show that like we didn't want to speculate anything and make any assumptions. He was with he's covered the team for 26 years.
Yeah, so there you go.
So we were like 10 years old when he started covering. So 97. Jeez.
No, it would have been Oh yeah, 97. Yep.
Yeah, 90, 96, 97. Like
Yep.
that's wild. It's a long time in that business.
Yeah, it's a long time
Shows
in one place too.
Shows how well respected and how great he was. I'll certainly like I always used to say to you, there's these rumors out here right now, but I don't believe it until Jim Salisbury says it.
Yep.
And you know, at this point, like I don't know who that next person is going to be. Like Jeff Passan, obviously, from like a national perspective, but like I got to find the next person who's going to drop rumors for the Phillies.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm just
when Jim hinted at it, it was true.
Oh yeah, I think like again, I'm sure I could scroll down Twitter and find some people, but listen, hopefully our girl Alex steps it up. She'll be great, I'm sure. Gelb is still around for the Athletic.
Yeah.
What's his name for MLB? Jesus, why can't I remember his
Zalecki.
name? Thank you, Zalecki. And there's another guy for the Inquirer that I see all the
and
time.
You have Corey Seidman too.
Yeah. So listen, the Phillies aren't lacking for good, people who write about stuff.
They have good people. It really comes down to.
But again, Jim just had that experience and that reputation that when he reported something, you knew it tended to be the truth. He wasn't reporting it. He was never. The funny thing is, he was never the first. He never tried to be the first guy.
Right. He
just always tried to. He always made sure he was right, and that what he was putting out there was the truth. As far as he knew.
You know who's really going to miss him?
Who?
Nick Castellanos.
He is. I'm sure Nick liked him deep down.
I'm sure he did. Like human nature, right?
Yeah, right.
Like both, and not a thing.
It was a tough time for Castellanos, and it was a question that had to be asked. It was what it was.
Yeah, Jim. Like again, such respect for you. Regs, there are probably a handful, maybe two, maybe you can reach my second hand of Jim Salisbury articles that I didn't read. Like I opened the NBC Sports app every day to see if Jim Salisbury wrote an article.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, Jason
listened feverishly to the podcast with Corey Seidman.
Yeah, like again, like Jason Stark tweeted, like he hasn't missed a Jim Salisbury article since he started writing for the Phillies. Like that's a guy, Jason Stark, who is at the top of baseball guys,
Hall of
baseball
Famer.
Writers, right?
Guy's a frick award winner. Like he's a Hall of Famer,
and like hasn't missed a Jim Salisbury article in 26 years.
Right, and I truly mean that since I've become the Phillies fan that I am. I've missed because obviously growing up you don't get the Inquirer.
No, right. Yeah, right.
But once it became globally available via the internet, like I remember being in Ireland in college and paying downstairs at the computer in the lobby of our hotel because you had to pay.
Oh yeah.
To read, like you had to pay for the internet to read the articles on the Inquirer that Jim or on NBC Sports, like to read what he said. Like that's how much Jim Salisbury. I feel like there's not, and I haven't really looked, so I could be wrong, but I feel like the pouring out is not what I expected it to be today. But certainly like he's beloved by Philly fans, and
I think I think every single beat writer in that press box has come out with something. And I think really when you come down to it, I'm sure that's all he cared about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he knows that he was beloved by the fans. I don't think there's any doubt that there weren't many people who didn't like Jim Salisbury. So just seemed like a good dude all around, and certainly I'll be keeping my ear to the ground here to see where he ends up next.
Yeah.
Because whatever city gets him, wherever he ends up, like so blessed and should be very excited about the coverage that they're going to get for their team because he is one of a kind.
Yeah.
One of a kind. That Twitter follow will go nowhere.
Oh yeah. No, not going anywhere.
I might just keep the alert on.
There you go.
He's the only baseball writer I have an alert on for.
I love it.
That's it. Jim Salisbury. All right, man. Birds.
Yeah. Let's get into this.
So wasn't great.
No, it was not.
Sunday, and I want to start here. Aside from the very first possession, I thought the defense played really well. They
Okay.
gave up 7 and they gave up a ton of time of possession, but after that,
Yeah, that's fair. I'm
I
fine.
thought I thought they played really well.
I'm fine with that.
I think, the defensive line got home a ton.
Yes, they did.
I think there's still probably some holes that we're experiencing because of some of the injuries, but ultimately, and yes, I know what Andy Dalton did, but once they adjusted to him, the dude did nothing. Here's my one thing about Gannon that I just want to say. Actually, I'm going to say 2 things. The first thing being, whatever he adjusts to, and Regs, I don't know. Maybe it's that he has to see what they do first, and then he adjusts to it. What their plan of attack is to his base defense, and then he adjusts. But I just almost want him to come out and be like, all right, I'm going to do this. They're going to adjust. So I'm going to be a step ahead, and we're just going to come out like this.
No, you said it exactly right. He's always reacting.
Right. So I want him to come out and look at it as, I'm going to come out and base. What are they going to do with their skill set, with what they have on the other side of the field? And instead of coming out and base, I'm going to surprise them and come out and what's going to stop that.
Or how about I've spent the last week watching tape, and I'm going to come out in this variation of my defense because this is what I've watched them do all week. Not I'm just going to come out in what I always do, and then let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Act like you're a coach. Your job is to study a team and create a defense to stop said team from play number 1. You don't sort of take the first drive and then be like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that's just let me see if the base defense can hold it down. I don't know what that is. I don't know.
Arrogance.
Here's the other thing.
It's arrogance.
We've talked about this on the show. At this point, I watch this defense and I watch that front 4 get home constantly. I wish he would just press. Just to see. They had 6 sacks in zone. I want to just know what it looks like. And something's clearly not right with Darius. We've said that.
It's yes.
And Bradbury got torched on a play this week too.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's been very consistent.
Yeah, and I think it was I think he just got I don't know what it was, but I mean, I don't know. There's just this feeling of if they pressed, I don't know. I truly believe that they might actually hit double-digit sacks in a game with that front that they have, and they're about to get Quinn back too. Healthy Quinn.
It continues to be the number one frustration for me with Gannon. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it comes from, maybe is better to say. This is his, second year being a defensive coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
Where does the ego come from? Where does the arrogance come from that my base set is so good that I can just run it out there all the time, not make any changes to it, and it's going to stop everybody? Dude, your defense gets beat from the top to bottom of the NFL. The worst quarterbacks look good, and they can't just maintain that because they're not good quarterbacks. And good quarterbacks are going to destroy you. I know that the Eagles turned it over a lot in the Dallas game, but 40 points is 40 points.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas is I'm not going to say a great offense, a good offense in the National Football League. New Orleans is a terrible one. So, like, how about you come out after watching film all week and just do what you need to do to stop a terrible offense and not allow them to trudge down the field and get a touchdown at home in a game that you're still starting your backup quarterback and need to win to clinch a 1 seed. Can we maybe understand the situation, like Mr. Gannon, and maybe try something different just for fun? It's like you said with the press stuff. Why is everyone always 10 yards off? If this defensive line is creating the pressure they're creating, you know what's really easy? When quarterbacks get rushed, they want to throw it fast. So if a receiver has a cornerback right next to them, it makes it harder to do that. Like, I know nothing about football. Never played a down of it in my life. Seems like if I can recognize that, it should be something that a savant, I'm putting air quotes for the people listening, defensive coordinator should be able to figure out.
Well, I think it'll always be debated on this show. That's my big thing for him. I still look at the stats and I'm like, he's doing something right. Because when you look at the numbers, they're still a top 3 defense in the NFL somehow. Going into the last week of the season, you know, they are tied for 8th in points per game. They're 1st in total yards. They're still middle of the pack in rushing yards.
But this is where the usual argument, which I'm on your side of, that you have to play who's in front of you, doesn't work for me with like the stats. How many points would Patrick Mahomes put up on this defense?
It's debatable. We don't know until Patrick Mahomes plays us.
Fair enough. But like, let's just sim it in Madden. And like, what do we think?
I think it's fair. Then it's fair to say how many points would a healthy Eagles offense put up against their defense.
I didn't say if we would win or not.
Yeah, their defense stinks more than a Gannon defense does.
I didn't say that. I didn't say if the Eagles would win or not. I'm just saying, like, again, let's try this. Like, you can't do this against good teams. You can't do this against great teams.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens once they hit the playoffs. Like, you know, I think if they get their full arsenal back defensively, which it sounds like they very well could, aside from Avante, they could have everything back after the bye week, and they're getting healthy at the right time if that's the case. One big concern that I have in the middle of the defense, who I thought was really good there for a stretch of the season, is Kaiser White. Over the last 2 games in the passing game, he's been targeted 10 times. He's given up 8 receptions for 109 yards and 112 passer rating. So I know you can't go to Nakobe Dean right now, but I don't know why that play's been hindered, because the previous 5 games, it was much better than that. So I am curious to like what that is.
Do we think it's like, I haven't looked at this closely enough, but do we think it's teams creating that matchup problem? As we're kind of seeing them take advantage of us missing our number 1 slot corner, right? They're lining up their best guys in the slot.
Mm-hmm. And I do believe there's probably some of that too with CJG out too.
Oh, absolutely.
Well. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. He was still targeted a bunch in the previous 5 games. He just didn't give up as many receptions. I think what I read, like a total of, was it 7 or 10 receptions?
I mean, he might just be getting tired.
Maybe he's banged up, and that's why this bye week would mean so much to them if they had done what they should have done against the Saints. Which leads me to the other side of the field, because again, like, you lose the game 20-10, and your defense only gives up 13 of those points. 7 of them being on the first drive, and the offense has plenty of opportunities and can't cash in. And you know, we don't know the Jalen Hurts situation. We don't know. No. They never put him on the IR. So there is a big part of me that just wonders if they were trying to sneak by without having to have him play.
Oh, I think absolutely.
And if that's the case, shame on them, because that to me is more arrogance than Jonathan Gannon. Like, you think you can just go win an NFL football game an NFL team still fighting for the playoffs with a guy like Gardner Minshew, and you're not even going to scheme to Gardner Minshew's strengths.
Yeah, right.
You're going to go out there and run your offense. Like, that's not how this works. Gardner Minshew was successful against the Cowboys because he ran the offense the way Gardner Minshew can run the offense. You came out against the Saints and tried to run the offense against the Saints the way you would with Jalen Hurts. And I do feel like Sirianni's lax approach and attitude toward that game is what cost them that game.
Oh, the offensive play calling was like atrocious.
Well, like, so here's the thing about Gardner Minshew. You cannot start with the deep ball and work your way back with Gardner Minshew. You have to start with intermediate routes to get him confident, and then you work the deeper part of the field. Gardner Minshew is a tempo, feel it quarterback. He is going to be successful if you make him successful. Like, he was hot early against Dallas.
Yeah.
So he built on that. He was good. He made some bad throws in that game, but ultimately he was good. But right away, they were dropping him back 3 5-step drops, and he was getting pressure.
Yeah.
You can't do that without Lane Johnson.
Yeah, right.
It's got to be quick. Dude, they were playing a light box the whole game. They were dropping dudes into coverage left and right and getting home over top of I'm drawing a blank on his name. The right tackle. The guy. No. Landon Dickerson's the guard.
Oh.
What the heck's his name? That's going to drive me freaking nuts. I'm embarrassed.
I thought Dickerson's the one that moved to right tackle.
No, he's left guard. They didn't move him.
I'm confused then.
They drafted him 2 years ago. I'm sorry, everybody. It's been a long day. It's been a long week. I'm looking it up, and I'm really embarrassed that this is happening. We've talked about him on the show many times. So
yep.
Jack Driscoll.
Thank you.
Mary Joseph. Good God. So like they were, Driscoll's really a guard.
Right.
That's what he is. Here's my ultimate problem. Where the hell is Andre Dillard? This guy couldn't learn in 4 years how to be a right tackle. Like, the amount of money he could make by being a swing tackle in the NFL when he's a free agent after this season. Like, look at Big V. Big V made his money because he's a swing tackle.
Yeah, right.
Like, if Andre Dillard could figure out how to play left and play right tackle, we wouldn't have this issue and have to play Driscoll at right tackle. I don't blame Jack Driscoll. He played his tail off.
Yeah.
But Cam Jordan's a really good defensive lineman.
Yeah.
He's been good for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got long arms, and he's quick, and he's going to drive Jack Driscoll. He's just going to do it. So I hated the scheme. I hated that we weren't running the football. I understand that Miles was a little beat up.
But still, that's like that team. They even showed it on the broadcast. Like, the Saints were the 23rd ranked rush defense and the 2nd ranked pass defense.
Yeah, but I feel like we could have gotten him in the pass. I just feel like you can get him in the pass with Jalen.
I don't disagree, but it's like you don't have Jalen Hurts. You need to establish the run to give Gardner more throwing lanes, to pull some of those guys into the box, allowed like Goddard and the tight ends to get open over the middle. Like, all those things, there's a domino effect in football.
Yeah. Which is what the opposite of what they do normally. But it's not the
first time they did it. What was that game? What was it? Chicago. I know AJ and Devontae both had like over almost 150 yards receiving each.
Yeah.
But like, they came out on a windy, cold day.
Yeah.
And like threw the ball 15 times to start the game.
Right.
It's like, what are you doing?
Right. I think one thing, while you mention him, I just want to mention this real quickly. 3 players with 3 straight 110-yard receiving games. Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Devontae Smith.
Yeah, Devontae's been fantastic.
Quietly, though.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. I didn't feel like he had 110 yards receiving.
Because it's not leading to anything. Because it's not leading to anything. Like, but Devontae is that guy.
He can be.
Especially when paired with AJ Brown, who is that like big play guy who gets you in the end zone. Devontae is the guy who gets you to the 15-yard line. So then AJ Brown does his thing.
Yeah.
Like and he's very good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, they just are wasting these. Like, again, that's why you didn't realize it, because it was sort of a wasted 100+ receiving yard day. They just couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah. And I think one of the other pieces that I want to mention real quickly about this game was something that I said before the show, but you were like, what? And I was like, oh, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to wait till the show. And I'm trying to locate it right now, and I'm not finding it off the cuff, but it's a Gardner Minshew stat. And it really caught me by surprise and bothers me quite a bit. Here it is. Gardner Minshew had the lowest single game grade by an Eagles quarterback since Nick Foles against Oakland on Christmas Day in 2017, the year they won the Super Bowl.
Jeez.
That was the night that he made, like, they clinched the number 1 seed that night, but he looked terrible.
Oh yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, we're not winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because there's no way we can win with Nick Foles. Like, there's no way. If this is the guy who's playing, we're screwed. Sure enough, the rest is history. But I mean, he was that bad, but I don't want to put it all on him. The throw that put them down 20-10 when you knew it was over. There's a lot of hubbub about that, and just, the AJ Brown trying to get his attention and all that stuff. And, there's a reason that they were 13-1. And the reason is they weren't turning the ball over. And Jalen Hurts had a lot to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And now they are. So certainly Gardner is a cause for that. I think another cause for that, Regs, is, no Lane Johnson. And
yeah, of course.
That's going to be the biggest thing. And we'll get into that as we hit the playoffs. But while we're on the topic of injured players, I do want to quickly highlight who I think should be the comeback player of the year. And I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but this dude's 34 years old, coming off an Achilles tear. 11 sacks, a career high, 4th highest pass rush productivity, and 6th highest pass rush win rate at 22%. Brandon Graham.
Yeah, just again in a group that is playing really well. You could argue, outside of Jalen and maybe the receiving core, probably the best group of players this entire season has been that D line.
Yeah.
Again, the offensive line is right there probably with them.
Yeah.
Outside of the injuries.
5 Pro Bowlers.
Yeah. But again, we didn't really know what to expect from this D line. We were excited about it, but Hassan Reddick was an unknown thing to us.
Holy moly. Dude would have 25 sacks if Gannon didn't job him into coverage. Gannon said that today, so I don't take credit for that.
Sweat has played his ass off this
unbelievable
season.
Yeah, he's been unbelievable.
And then again, a 34-year-old guy coming off an Achilles injury. That's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a thing that guys that old in this sport come back from and have really productive seasons. And again, I think I'm pretty sure we talked about this way back in our Eagles preview pod, that this line was set up that Brandon Graham didn't have to be the guy.
Yeah.
Which was exactly what we wanted for him, because he could get himself back from this injury.
Yeah.
And he's gone out and been like, if I'm going out, we're putting it all out there. I'm not letting this opportunity go away, which has been who he's been his entire time here. Right.
And I think, the obviously the additions of Joseph and Sue have been enormous for them.
Yeah.
And we're gonna quickly go through these injuries before we jump into this coming week. And I do have one more thing that I just want to touch on from this game before we move on. But let's do that. That hold call against Landon Dickerson was an absolute joke.
Oh, it was terrible. So bad.
And there's your difference in the game, right?
Yeah.
By the way.
I mean, that plus the pick six, but
but the pick six doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because they're going to run the football there. They're not going to They're not going to be throwing the football down by their own goal line.
Listen, you don't have to take our word for it. Just like search Twitter and look at all the actual ex-players, defensive and offensive linemen alike. Like, it wasn't like a bunch of defensive linemen were coming to that guy's sort of protection about it. Everyone was just like, nope, that's just a good old-fashioned big boy pancake.
Yep.
And
Landon Dickerson, my dude.
Yep. And they robbed him.
Yeah, they did. And that's a touchdown and just a disaster. But guess what? Nothing will happen to that guy. So whatever. Okay. Jumping to the injuries. We clearly know number one top injury. Actually, you know what? I'll argue top injury is Lane Johnson. Lane certainly is a major part of this team. They just don't win without him. They're now 9-22 without him in his career, which is just unbelievable.
That's crazy.
It's just unbelievable.
Just crazy.
You know, clearly they do believe he's going to be able to come back and help them, because I do think if he weren't, then Jordan Mailata would have moved to right tackle by now, and Andre Dillard would be playing left tackle, because I just don't think Driscoll is a tackle. I think he works hard. I think he's a grinder, but he is a middle of the offensive line player. And I think if they really think that Lane Johnson isn't going to be back, they do it the other way. So Lane will play. I don't know how the hell he's going to play.
Yeah, I don't know either.
With a tear in his abdomen. But he's a grinder. He's tough. And it may come to a point where he can't play, and then they're going to have to consider making that move at some point.
Yeah.
Because against really good defenses like possibly the 49ers or, you know, the Cowboys are going to put Micah Parsons across from Jack Driscoll for 4 quarters. It's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, it's not going to be good.
They're going to have to use Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
In that situation.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts apparently looked really good today. Both Goddard and AJ Brown had really positive things to say about the ball coming out. Said that he was a little rusty, but the ball was coming out with good velocity. AJ Brown said something to the extent of like, you know, if it were up to me, I'd say he was ready to go. So we'll see what happens there. I just hope they don't get too arrogant and think that, you know, Gardner Minshew is going to be. What I would love to see is get up 4 scores in the first half and then let Gardner Minshew play.
That's what I would love for it to happen. Let's just like be up 20 points and then you can let Gardner play. Yeah. Like, let's just do that.
Just keep handing the ball off to Kenny Gainwell.
Anybody. Who cares? They're playing their second string.
Yes. CJG was with the first team secondary today, Regs. So
that one was honestly shocking when you told me that. Because again, they haven't really said a bunch, or maybe I've just been missing it, but I haven't seen a ton about sort of his timetable to come back. And I think they're going to open his window soon. If not tomorrow, it'll open. And I just think there's been articles written about this, but like the Eagles' turnover margin from like the first 10 games to compared to now since he's been gone, like that guy is just a ball hawk.
Yeah.
Like that and third and 30 doesn't happen with him on the field.
That's still believe
probably an interception.
They could deploy him as a I don't think Dak even throws that ball if he's on the field. I still say they can deploy him as like a Malcolm Jenkins and find ways to match him up against certain guys until Avante's back.
Yeah, for sure. He's just it's just proven to be a really, really valuable guy.
Really good player. Josh Sweat, you know, clearly a scary injury on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
But it appears as though he will be a go in the playoffs at some point.
I mean, he literally tweeted that.
Yeah, he'll be back this year. But I was like, oh,
again, that's a player saying it, but like, yeah.
But like, it doesn't appear to be wrong. Like, it appears as though he has a shot to play in the divisional round.
Yeah. First of all, thank goodness it was much less of an injury than it appeared. Anytime that you see a guy sort of compress his head and his neck into a tackle like that and then have to be stretchered off a field is never good, regardless of if they give you like a thumbs up or not as they're going away.
Right. Him saying that, though, I feel like he's definitely not playing on Sunday.
No.
But if they win on Sunday and they have that bye week, it is very possible Like he would almost have 3 full weeks off at that point.
I'm just not sure. Like we can't emphasize enough how important it is for this team to have a bye week.
Oh God.
Like I don't think we keep
you
sort
don't
of
lay, yeah.
we keep sort of like saying it in passing, but like I don't think we could emphasize it enough how important it is.
We're about to get there because we have one more injury and then we're going to talk about that.
All right.
Avonte Maddox, you were ready to spit your beer through the computer.
I was.
But I read today that there's a chance he could play in the NFC Championship game.
That's wild. Everyone just said it's a significant toe injury and he's out 6 to 10 weeks.
So I did not hear 6 to 10. This is where our information differed. On Inside the Birds, and I very much trust those two. They've very direct contacts to the Eagles. I heard 4 to 8 weeks. And that would be like the NFC title game would be like that 6-week mark.
I mean, again, I'm very hopeful that it can happen. He was an absolute bullet on the field in that game against Dallas. Like when you were watching the game, your eyes tracked to him because of how much he was flying around the field.
Well, I do believe that if it's like a broken toe, it's a lot better than turf toe where you tear tendons in the toe.
It is.
So it hasn't been labeled turf toe. So like at the end of it, like I feel like I hear players talk a lot about like broken toes and toe injuries and how painful they really are as compared to some other things.
Yeah.
But he would be huge in a game against like the Niners because of what they have.
Oh my goodness.
In terms of slot weapons and Christian McCaffrey. And so, I mean, you know, Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, like he would be enormous for them.
Yeah.
So certainly, you know, we'll sort of hold our breath on that, but all right. So you mentioned it. There's mounting pressure on this team. Not just from the perspective of, oh my gosh, we were 13-1 and now we're 13-3 and it could be considered a choke job. Look, I don't look at 13-4 as a choke job at all, especially when you're, you know, in a division where everybody has a freaking winning record.
Yeah, right.
And the last 2 weeks you've been missing your starting quarterback. I don't look at that as a choke job necessarily. I'm not excited about it, and I don't want to end the season on 3 straight losses.
Yeah.
But they're definitely feeling pressure because I think this bye week is the more important thing. They need the bye week in the worst way. They need guys healthy. They need Jalen to get another week. They need Lane to get another week. They need Sweaty to get another week. They don't want to play a week without another extra week without Avonte Maddox. Like the older guys on this roster could use a bye.
Yeah, like you just said, Kaiser White, like is obviously something is going on.
Darius Slay.
Something right. Yeah.
I mean, you know, you don't tell me Jason Kelce couldn't use a week off.
Yeah, right.
Like, you know, it's one of these situations where, you know, you've got aging veterans on your team. You know, if Miles Sanders' knee is really bothering him, he could use an extra week off.
Yep.
Honestly, if Sirianni's plan was we're going to try and sneak a week without Jalen, we're just going to be super careful. Shame on him because he could have won that game with Jalen last week walking away.
Yeah.
And then they could have had 2 weeks to rest a lot of these guys.
Right. I think that's where I'm having a disconnect with how this team is approaching this. You would think they'd be trying to get all these things in place to have as many weeks off as possible. Yeah. I know some people say that like, oh, they're going to get cold. They're going to be rusty when they get to the playoffs. That was true, but maybe before you lost your right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe before your best slot corner went down again, or before your safety was still out with a lacerated kidney or whatever it was. Yep.
And your best defensive end,
right, goes down with another injury. Like this Saints game, that's why this Saints game baffles me so much. Like I know Gardner played terrible, but there were ways to avoid that.
Yeah.
There were ways to game plan in a certain way that would have allowed this team to be in the best position, and the coaching staff failed. They failed. They came out and they either weren't prepared or, like you said, they were so arrogant about being able to beat the Saints that they decided to not do the proper prep work and have this team ready to play. Right. And have a proper game plan ready to beat the Saints. At home, in a game that gets you two weeks off before the playoffs start. So I'm not sure what it was. Sirianni didn't, of course, came out and just said, we got to do better, blah, 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 his usual crap. But like, look, man, you showed how much of a rookie you are at this. Like your entire coaching staff, who is your responsibility, showed how much you guys have never been in this situation before. And like, it can't happen. It can't happen. We shouldn't be going into this Giants game still trying to clinch the 1 seed. I get it. The Dallas game was going to be a tough one. It is what it is. It was an away game against a good team who was all jacked up to play, and you had your backup quarterback in. I get it. The Saints are terrible. They're not a good football team. And you're at home in a game that you can try and clinch the 1 seed and give your guys an extra week of rest. Sirianni and this coaching staff failed miserably to be ready for that game and put this team in a position to win. And they're lucking out by the Giants having won that game and not having to play anybody. Because if the Giants had to come out and had the opportunity to keep the Eagles out of a 1 seed, you can bet your ass that coaching staff was going to have that Giants team hyped up to play this Eagles team and keep them out of a 1 seed.
And, you know, I think for me, you're putting more guys at risk now.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Unnecessarily.
There's 30 more snaps that these guys never had to play.
And the concern is, you know, and hopefully you take care of business and you put them away early. Like you get to halftime with a 3 touchdown lead, and you know, maybe
you don't see a name you recognize for 40 minutes.
Maybe your offense has to play 1 possession of the second half just to put it away. But like, I don't know how I'm going to feel if we go into halftime and it's a 1-score game. Like he needs to have them ready to give an ass kicking out on Sunday afternoon, because you let that team hang around long enough, man. And it's not going to go well. Like, you've seen it the last 2 weeks. Like, I still think we're better than Dallas.
Yeah, we are.
But they hung around and you turned over the ball too much. There's definitely mounting pressure. Put it on a scale of 1 to 10. How much pressure do you think the Eagles should feel this weekend, or do feel this weekend? I think we both would say they should feel 10. But how much do you think they do feel as professional football players, coaching staff, you know, knowing the situation, knowing what they're going into? What do you think they're feeling?
I think they should feel a 9, like you said. I think they should be embarrassed about that Saints game.
Yeah, I agree.
What I think they feel is like a 6 or 7, because the Giants don't have to play anybody and are showing all signs of not playing anyone. And I agree with you. I'm worried about that as well, because we've already seen this team has the ability to not take things seriously. And it's not something that we thought was a thing with Jalen leading this team.
Right.
But it's become a thing. It happened in the Washington game, and it happened in the Saints game. And even the Chicago game, which I get it was cold and all this stuff, but like, they did not come out with the proper mindset or game plan in that game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's something that this coaching staff will realize. I don't know. I don't know if they will realize enough how badly they blew it, and how much they're going to want to come out and change that.
Well, you know, they're going to have to make a point.
Yeah, we hope.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't, you're going to be the 5 seed and you're going to Tampa. So, you know, because I'll tell you right now, I mean, now there's a chance Dallas could lose and you end up the 2 seed and you still get a home game, but then you're playing without all these guys.
You just can't let it happen. You can't let it happen.
No. But I don't know that Dallas loses, because they're going to get Sam Howell at quarterback, and I don't know what Sam Howell's going to look like. And I'll tell you right now, San Francisco's not losing to the Cardinals. So if both lose, or if both of those teams win and you lose, you're the 5 seed and you're going to see Tom Brady.
You have to go into this game assuming every other team wins.
Yep.
This is a game against the second string of the New York Giants.
Yep.
You have to win this game flat stop.
I truly do not for a second believe that any starter plays.
No.
For the Giants.
I mean, they've said it.
One.
We saw it in the practice, like you said.
They're not putting a single dude out there because if
There's
Saquon
no
Barkley plays
reason.
a snap and turns his ankle,
Right.
If
no
Daniel,
reason.
the way this defensive line's playing, if Daniel Jones
Like gets
separates
a
his
concussion,
shoulder,
right, or something.
gets a concussion, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, so you got to go in there, but you've got to act like it's Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, and like that's the way you have to act. Otherwise, we're right back to where we started. There's no spread, there's no total points, so I mean, I'm just gonna say it's got to be big. It's got to be Eagles big.
Yeah.
Key to the game, don't take it freaking lightly. Go win the football game, get the bye, and get healthy.
Yeah. Everything you just said. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers to that.
Everything you just said.
All right. We got everything?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Then Phixated time?
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, like we said, we started off funny. We went kind of sad in two ways, and then we bitched about the Eagles for 30 minutes. So I am going to end on I guess it's a sad note, but I'm also going to say it's a happy note too. So for those of you who've been listening to the show from the start, one of our favorite shticks and jokes is when you hear the little yip from behind us of my beloved Shih Tzu Puff. And so on Monday, Puff's been aging. She's 17. And Andrea and I had been having the very hard conversation about, when it would be time for Puff. She was getting slow and just not moving the same way, and accidents and all that stuff. And we had wanted to, wait till after Andrea's birthday, which is tomorrow. Happy birthday, Andrea.
Happy birthday, A-Beard.
So, we had wanted to wait until after that, and that was the plan. And so Puff traveled for Christmas with us to Andrea's parents, to my family's house, and she got to see all of her favorite people. And then we got home, and Puff started to really nosedive. And they, Regs, they always tell you, like, a dog will let you know when it's time, when they want to go. And Puff was really trying to send the message over the last week, just, not even close to what she had been even the week previous to. And, we kind of looked at each other on Monday morning and decided that it was time for Puff to cross the Rainbow Bridge. So, you won't be hearing any more yips from behind me as we record these shows. Puff has passed away. And I just want to take a few minutes to sort of honor her and everything she's done for, Andrea and myself over the last 12 years that we've had her. Now, I mentioned Puff was 17, and she initially lived with a family who did not want her and unfortunately treated her as such and abused her. So she ended up leaving that home. And you've met Puff, Regs. I don't know how anybody does that to any dog, but especially a dog like her, who is so tender and calm and loving and just like unassuming in so many ways. And so she ended up in a home, an adoption agency, and and Andrea's grandmother adopted her. And then when Andrea's grandmother was sick and was about to pass away, she told Andrea's mom, my mother-in-law, that she wanted to make sure that Puff stayed in the family. At that point, Puff's name was Dixie. When we got Puff, her name was Dixie. So Andrea, being the person that she is, said that she wanted to take the dog. And so we got Dixie. And we decided that she didn't look like a Dixie. She looked like a Puff. So we renamed her Puff. And Puff was actually the first being to see Andrea's engagement ring. I showed it to her the night that that I proposed to her. So, and over the course of time, Puff just kind of took on her life of her own. She had a voice in our house, and She was sassy and cuddly and excitable and would wait at the windowsill. We gave her a little prop up so she could sit at the window of our townhouse and just look out all day. And, when I would pull in from work, she'd be standing at the door looking out, waiting for me. And, one of our favorite things was like her little run around the house, and she would roll over when we would get to her and roll on her back. And, she just became like our child. Like we did everything with her. We took her everywhere. She had a stocking on Christmas and everything. So, she just became, our entire world. She was all we had. And we wouldn't have had it any other way. And, Andrea would go away and I'd say we were having a daddy-daughter weekend, and, I would get her a cheeseburger and she would share a cheeseburger with me from McDonald's or, and fries or something like that, or I'd make it on the grill, whatever. And we would share it. But I think the thing about Puff or any dog is just the pure loyalty that they show. There were so many nights where I'd be up late doing work for my principal certification, or, I wasn't feeling well, and she would be right at my feet, or in my lap as I was working. And, just always wanted to make sure I was okay. There were times that I wouldn't get a job that I applied for and I interviewed and I got to the final round, and I would be so upset. I'd be in tears, and Puff would jump up on the couch and just lay on my lap or sit on. She would climb up on my shoulder. Sometimes she would climb up on the back of the couch and just strap herself across my shoulder like a scarf. And, she always knew exactly, what it was we were feeling and our emotions. And, at all times, she just got it. So, as she aged and things got harder for her, she kind of lost a little bit of that, but you always felt like it was there. She went through a lot in her life. She had cancer. She had ligament stuff, everything you could imagine this dog had. And she never lost the ability to love. And I think that's what's so great about dogs, and especially about Puff. She had a terrible early part of her life, and she had a hard middle of her life with her health, and end of her life was hard, but she never stopped loving the people that loved her. And, dogs never ask for anything in return. You try and give them everything, but all they do is love you no matter what. And, Puff loved us till her last breath. And, she was essentially like my first kid. And I'm gonna miss her, man.
Yeah, I know you are. I know that everyone out there is feeling for you guys. I am not a dog. My mother was not a dog person, and don't have dogs, but I know how much yours have meant to you, and I know how much Puff meant to both of you guys, and I'm sure many other people. It always sucks to have to make that decision, but like you said, I think in the best possible way, you guys are relieved that she's not in pain or suffering, or, I bet if you kept it for another week, like you'd be feeling even worse than you were now, that she maybe had to suffer or maybe would have been in pain. So I get it. As always, we and I are here for you guys. It's going to obviously suck for a little while. But it's like you said, there's, with pain is, with happiness is pain, right? And the other way around. So
yeah,
again, I met Puff several times, and again, not being a dog person, dogs tend to like to just jump on me because I'm a big guy, and especially little dogs. So she was not any different than that. So,
well, we always joke that her favorite song was "Knee Deep" by Zach Brown, and there's always there's that part in that song where it talks about finding your own paradise. So I know that she has. And Puff, if you're listening, I know you're probably barking because we're doing a show.
That's right.
I love you, and save me some cheeseburgers. for when I get to see you again. So I love you, sweet girl, and I know that you'll save Mom and I a spot for when we get to you one day.
She will, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's all right.
So thanks for letting me kind of roll with that. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you helping me when I got emotional there.
Don't worry about it, man. You know I'm always here for you. Always,
So
no matter what.
Is this where is this where we make our plea for our next guy?
Is this the right time if you just talked about your dead dog? Oh my God, I don't mean to laugh at that, but like, I don't know, maybe we save it for the next one. This one's been
Okay.
this has been an emotional one. We're gonna have to
We'll come back after the Eagles clinch.
When the Eagles win, and you know,
it made me smile. I needed something to make me smile out of that. I needed something to make me smile.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm fine. Oh boy.
It'll come out if they clinch. We'll do it if they clinch.
That's right. When the Eagles clinch, you know, we can have an emergency pod and
we'll
we can
release our next one. We'll do the emergency pod if they win on Sunday night.
That's right.
We'll feel good about it.
There'll be plenty of time.
In the meantime, everybody.
Oh my God, that was funny. Jesus.
That was funny. I needed to make myself smile. I don't even think I meant it. I just needed to smile. That was a hard 5 minutes for me.
Oh, buddy.
Hard 5 minutes. Oh. Guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you click subscribe below. Make sure you follow us wherever you get your podcast, whatever platform it would be, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, whatever it is. Click and subscribe, and certainly rate us as well. Those ratings certainly help get us out there to more people. After you do that, please go to Instagram, follow at B&B Podcast on there, and you can follow the same on Twitter. Follow at the Phixated Pod on Twitter, and at the Mic Drop 5 is me, at Big Regs with a Z is Regsy Boo. You can follow him and I there on Twitter, and then certainly jump over to Phixated fan page on Facebook where you can interact with other listeners of the show.
Get it now, because our goal for 2023 is to really up that social media game. So
yeah, get in now.
Get in there early.
Yeah. And then absolutely click the merchandise page. We are working with our merchandise group right now on a few other things. So hopefully we'll have those released here in the next month or so.
The
and once
koozies
we do,
are coming, people. The koozies are
they
coming.
are. They are. They're on the way. And I think we have a couple of other shirts, hoodies, things we want to do as well.
Yeah,
so
and then I think if anything is, we've said this before, but I think I want to bring it up again while we start to look into the merch stuff. If you have something that you always think about, like a saying that you hear us say all the time, let us know. Like, we'll turn it into a t-shirt. Yeah. I think you might be putting it up on Facebook soon to be like, you know, throw us some sayings that we could put on a t-shirt from the show. So like, if we're trying to rack our brains for like catchphrases and little things that we can put on t-shirts, but we'd love to throw it out to the audience and see what resonates with them from the show that we can add into the merch.
Sure, for sure. So we'll do that here soon. I think you know, maybe in the next week or so after this week of football games, we'll put something out there, because that's when we're really working with the merchandise group on, you know, what's next. So if we can get them a couple of shirt ideas or hoodies or something like that, we'll add those. So awesome. All right, man. Well, hey, good talk tonight. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, you know, I will always be here no matter what.
All right, everybody. We love you. We appreciate you listening. As always, make sure that you're kind to someone. Be good, be kind, be safe. Take care, and ultimately, go Birds.
We love you, Puff. Go Birds.
Oh my God, deep to right field, way up there and way out of here. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.